Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. What do you use Bluetack for? If you've ever run into Bluetack, you'll notice that it solves many problems. You can use it to stick a frame to the wall, get lint off clothes, hold objects in place, and so on. There are probably hundreds of ways to use Bluetack, and the question that arises is, what problem does Bluetack solve? When we look at any product or service, we run into a similar issue. Almost anything you sell solves many problems. An iPad may be used to draw, to write, or even to record a podcast. A book like The Brain Audit can be used to understand how clients think, but maybe just helpful in creating your uniqueness. How do you determine which problem is the most important of all? There you are sitting down to write your sales page, and you have this dilemma. How do you determine which is the most important problem of all? More importantly, what if your customers don't have that specific problem and then just ignore your sales page? Despite what everybody tells you, nobody precisely knows why a client buys off a sales page. Like the Bluetack dilemma, there may be a lot of reasons why they choose to read your sales page. And what can you do? What can I do? We can't stuff 3 problems into a single headline. We can't say something like, need Bluetack for sticking frames to a wall, getting lint off clothes, or holding objects in place. We can't do that. That's crazy. So whenever we write a headline, we are making our best possible guess. And while guessing seems like a ridiculous way to go about writing a sales page, there is a bit of science to it. Today's podcast doesn't go down those 3 steps, which is step 1, step 2, step 3. However, we do cover some of that. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is how the problem is generic. We don't see the problem as being generic. We think that there must be one problem over all the other problems that the client decides, oh, I know why I'm buying this product. I just saw this headline and this is the reason why I'm buying this product. If we had that kind of magic trick, then all we could do, or all we should do, is to take that one problem, put it as the headline, run that problem, drive it home, and then you'd sell everything in sight. But that doesn't happen. And the reason why it doesn't happen is we don't know specifically how the client goes about buying, what decisions they make. But we do know one thing, and we know one thing very consistently, and this is the science behind it, is that all of our problems are generic. What do we mean by generic? Well, let's take some examples. Say you want to stop smoking. That's generic. You want to write better articles. That's generic. You are not sleeping well. That's generic. So what we have here are these sets of problems or individual problems that everybody seems to have. That's why we call it generic. But the irony is it's also specific. So we could go to an office and we could meet 20 people and say, are you having some trouble sleeping? Would you like to sleep better every night? Well, everybody says yes, even if they do it slowly because they're still sleepy. And because we know that there is this generic part of things, now we can get specific. And this takes us to the second part of today's podcast. So the first part is that we don't know exactly what causes the client to respond to your headline and to your first problem. But what we do know is that there is a generic thing. The second part is where we get specific. In the same headline, in the same first problem on your sales page, we now get specific. Recently, we announced a storytelling course that starts in April, and as usual, it's sold out. However, before we started that course, we had a waiting list, we had pre-sale, we did all of the things that we do to ensure that it sells out. And one of the things that we sent out to that waiting list is a questionnaire, and we asked them to list the 5 main problems that they would have with storytelling. As you would expect, we didn't get one answer. You would think they're all doing a storytelling course, they all have a common problem, that problem's going to go to the top of the sales page. But no, 50 people respond, then you get 50 into 5, that's 250 answers. That's 250 problems. How do you solve it? How do you put that one problem on the sales page when you get so many answers? Yes, there's overlap. Yes, out of 250 answers, maybe 100 overlap at some level. But eventually, what you have are far too many problems, and you can't put all of them on the top of the sales page. You have to pick one. We go about this systematically. Step 1 is, what is the recurring problem? What is that generic problem? Step 2 is, what is the specific that we can add to that problem? Hence, in the case of the storytelling course, we went about step 1. The recurring problem is, I want to tell great stories. So if you go into an office, if you go into a situation where there are many entrepreneurs and you say, how many of you want to tell great stories? And it's quite safe to say that everybody in the room will put their hands up and go, yep, I would like to tell better stories. But the second and more specific part is, how do you tell your stories without getting it all bloated? Now you have a specific there. The generic is how to tell stories. The specific is how not to bloat that stories and put the audience to sleep. And the moment you put out that statement to an audience, either on a sales page or live, what you'll find is that if it is generic enough, it will get the attention of 2 sets of clients. The first set is those who specifically feel that their stories are boring. They feel this every single day. Whenever they stand up, whenever they write, they feel their stories are boring. They want to fix that problem. However, and this is interesting, it will also get the attention of the client who already tells entertaining stories. Maybe they're a professional speaker. Maybe they write all the time. Maybe they're very good at telling stories. Maybe they're even comedians, and comedians really tell good stories. Even that lot is going to go, oh, wait, how do I tell these stories? And then how do I tell them without the bloat? How do I cut out all of that extraneous stuff? What we've done so far is we've looked at 2 parts. And the first part is, how do you get something generic that everybody agrees with? And then how do you put in something specific that maybe not everybody agrees with, but quite a few people agree with? And is that it? Is that all you need for your headline and the first problem on your sales page? Yes, it's a good starting point, but that's not all you need. We start out with the generic, we go to the specific, and you have to understand that in any case, the whole purpose of the headline and that first problem is to get the client reading. Most of us agonize over the headline. We worry about the problem that follows, and we try to make everything good, and we should. But clients are still doing one thing, and that is they are skimming through the page. They rarely base their purchase on the headline. They look at the first paragraph, they agree with it, and they go, yes, let me read some more. So our agony of getting the headline right is probably not needed. If you were writing an ad which was going to be seen in a newspaper or magazine, then maybe yes, because you have loads of competition. All of these other ads are around in the same newspaper. All of these other ads are jostling for your attention in the same magazine. But in this case, the client is on a single page. They're on your sales page. They're on your site. They're not going anywhere in a hurry. Your job is to get that generic point across, add the specific, and then to get them to skim. If you've done your work well enough, they will read. And yes, they will read at high speed. They will go from the headline to the first problem to the second problem to the features and benefits, and then the bullet points, which may number anywhere between 15 to 60. They will decide based more on their skimming than on your headline. The headline is often the part where we struggle the most, yet it is just a single problem from a list of problems. Remember, we sent out that questionnaire and we got 250 answers? Well, at least 150 of them are valid. We're not going to put 150 on the page. We're going to put some of them, and then the client is going to skim through them. And when they skim through them, each one of them is going to make an impact, and some of them a greater impact than the other ones. In effect, your sales page is like a slide. You get to the top and then you slide to the bottom. But what is the next action? And this is the part that we miss out. In our case at Psychotactics, what we do is we want them to get onto a waiting list. If we're selling a course like the article writing course or storytelling or cartooning, we want you, the client, to go there, to look at the price, to look at when the course is being held, but you can't buy anything. Because that's not the action. The action is to get you on a waiting list. And your action might be different. Your action might be that you want them to buy something. But whatever that action is, whatever that call to action is, that's crucial. When you look around you, most sales pages are built for the client to get there, to read, and then to buy. And that's fair enough. Many of our sales pages are built that way. That's your next action, and that's just fine. However, if your product is more expensive, if your service is more expensive, you want them to get onto some sort of list. And that's when you can use all of the other headlines that you've been storing. That's because a client reads a sales page for the first time, and usually they're not ready to buy. Unless it's an emergency, clients tend to take time to make up their minds. Hence, we would need to follow up several times. This is when you potentially get the chance to send out headline after headline through email or any other system that you follow. Let's do a little summary because we've covered quite a lot. We started out with the generic problem. Then we added the specific. Then we got the customer to slide down the sales page, reading through the second problem, the bullets, the benefits and features. But now you have all of those other problems that you know that the client is interested in. What do you do with all of those other points that you got from the client? Such good research. Where are you going to put all of that? This is the third part, which is the follow-up. Remember that questionnaire that we talked about, which we sent to people on the waiting list for the storytelling course? Well, here are 5 of the questions that came back. The first one, how do I create compelling stories that can be used in a written format or speaking it out in front of an audience? Second one, how do I come up with loads of interesting personal stories? The third one, how do I avoid my stories from becoming just a rambling mess? The fourth one, how do I tell short stories and longer stories with equal skill? The fifth one, how do I figure out how to slow down a story or to speed it up? Notice they all started with this generic thing, which is storytelling, and then they went into those other specifics. Well, every one of these could become a problem. Every one of them could go to the top of your sales page, and people will respond to it. But what are you going to do with it now that you've already used one of these problems? Because even if you got just 5 answers, 4 are just sitting around doing nothing. Well, they're not doing nothing. This is where you follow up. Remember that waiting list that you created? Remember that call to action where somebody signed up after reading your sales page? This is what happens next. You can follow up with the questions that you got from your client. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're wondering, what am I going to follow up with? This is what you're going to follow up with the stuff that you've already got from your client. And then, of course, you answer those questions. In a sense, you have to write an email sequence that follows your initial sales page. Every time you send that follow-up, the client is reminded about your product, about your service. If there is a fixed deadline, they will act based on that deadline. But if there's no deadline, they will buy when they're ready. In any case, you don't have to worry about the perfect headline on your sales page. You don't have to worry about it now or never. If this method sounds crazy, well, yes, it is. A copywriter will tell you that you should test your headlines, that one headline can do 20% or even 500% better than another headline. And there is no doubt that that is true. The reality is that these copywriters are likely to be selling products in high volume. They can do a lot of extensive testing. Our reality, which is yours and mine, is a lot different. We don't want to sell 2 gazillion products. We'd be happy to sell about 20 seats on a course or 35 copies of a book. We have a specific, modest goal in mind. We don't get started because we are so worried about testing and getting things right that we don't get to the starting point at all. We don't finish our sales page, we don't have a follow-up system in place, and the stress is just too much. But remember, there are just 3 things that you have to do. The first is you have to get the generic thing, which is, I want to write articles, I want to tell stories, I want to sleep better. Then add the specific. Then you drive home that first problem based on that specific, and then you get the client to skim through the sales page, through the benefits and features, through the bullet points, and then get them to take an action, which is when you follow up. And you probably realize that we've already done that summary. We've already done the 3 points. Even though I said that we weren't covering 3 points, we ended up covering 3 points anyway, and we finished off with the summary. So that's really what you have to do on a sales page. Don't stress about what is the best problem for the top of the sales page, because there is no best problem. We never buy based on that one problem alone. We look at a product, any product. You're buying a new computer. You don't go, oh, that's the only problem that it's solving. We look at different features, different benefits, and then we make an overall decision. That's what you've got to do as well. Let the client go through the skimming process and then get them to a waiting list. And that's when the real magic happens. The question is, what is the one thing that you can do today? And I think that the one thing that you can do today is to figure out, how can I get this client onto a list, a separate list, so that I can send up that follow-up? And that's because clients don't buy when you're ready to sell. They buy when they're ready. And you've got to put all of those steps in place beforehand. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in Psychotactics land. On the 23rd of April, we're going to have the article writing home study, and we have just a few copies. There are just 35 copies. Yes, it's digital, but we sell only 35 copies at a time. And for that, you have to be on the waiting list and have to be approved. So go to psychotactics.com/AW-goodies. AW stands for article writing. Go to psychotactics.com, AW-goodies, and you'll get goodies. You'll get stuff that helps you with your article writing. And then after that, we will follow up. We will follow up with approving you, and then we will follow up with stuff. And we are experiencing this whole concept in real time. When you go to the sales page, it's not like you're going to go there the first time and buy the product. No. You're going to the sales page, you're going to read the product description, you're going to read the main problem, the bullets, the features, all of that stuff, the testimonials, and then you'll get on the waiting list. And when you get on that waiting list, then we'll follow up. So you can see this happening in real time, and this is called pre-sale or part of pre-sale. So understand this process and go through it. Go to psychotactics.com/AW-goodies, and I've said enough. I'll say bye for now, and we'll see you in 5000 BC. Bye-bye. Still listening? The reason that you are listening to this podcast is because of someone who wrote to me. So I have a client, Thomas Clifford. He's a good friend. He's been to our workshops as well. And he wrote to me with this question, which is to say that you can send me questions by email. You know my email address, Sean@psychotactics.com. And he sent me this question about the problem that he was having with his client because he's a copywriter. And his client wanted to know, how do we know that we're choosing the right problem for the sales page? What if we put 2 problems? What if we put 3 problems? This is the kind of issue that copywriters face, but also you as someone who's selling a product or service faces. And so he wrote me this question, and this is the answer that I came up with. And that's what I would encourage you to do as well. If you have any questions, don't worry if they're big questions, small questions, supposedly silly questions. They're all good questions. Send them to me at Sean@psychotactics.com, and you'll find that you might get a complete answer in return. I'll say bye for now and see you in 5000 BC. Bye-bye.